This is a special group. It's a special group of people that have been gathered together really around the 7 principles of Evergreen organizations. And so what I'm going to talk about is not necessarily new. It's part of our journey that we've been on as a company. And as David mentioned, we've been around for 100 years. This is our centennial year. And this is a description of a journey about where we've been, where we're at, and where we're going. But it's very much in process. And it's very much, as all of you have described earlier in the presentations here, it's a journey about not only our family, but most importantly, it's our people. Because one of the key principles of evergreen companies is people first. And so what I'm going to describe is really around an experience that we've had around a personal journey of discovery for all of our teammates around the world, of which there's 4,200 in 18 locations. And about clarifying that purpose and Griffith's purpose together. And then saying, how do we impact society in terms of driving the impact that we both aspire and that we actually deliver in terms of doing that. And so part of that, and I'm not going to spend much time talking about what we do, and people can ask me about that later, but we enable other great recipes for food companies around the world, essentially. And so this part of the slice of the story was we started our purpose journey and sustainability platform really around 2013 in earnest. We started organizing the company around impact and having that drive our strategy. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But this particular part of the story is about October of last year, and I was at a Net Impact conference. So those of you who don't know what Net Impact is, it's a group of 200 universities around the world that focus chapters on sustainability and social justice. It's primarily undergraduate as well as graduates and a fair number of MBAs. And these are students who believe deeply in the fact that business is a force for good, that sustainability matters, and it is a strategy going forward of innovation and around social justice. And so the annual conference they have, it brings in about 1,500 undergraduates and MBAs. And they gathered, in this particular instance, this was in Phoenix. And I was asked to speak on a panel with others on trust and transparency in the food chain. And my fellow panelists were Honest Tea, which had sold to Coca-Cola, were the chief sustainability officer for General Mills, who had come from Annie's, privately held company that had sold, the big CPG. There was Theo Chocolate, the founder of Theo Chocolate, and myself. And as we went through what we saw in the trends, what we were doing for trust and transparency in the food chain, which is so critically important, we talked about our purpose-driven companies, our ethos, how we did that, and why it was important. And at the very end of the panel, I said, the leader said, would you share one idea that wasn't discussed so far that you think it would be important to share? And so those who went before me, they kind of, as most good speakers do, they rephrased and emphasized the key points that they were making about their company, about trust, transparency, and what they were doing, and the impact that they were making. And as I looked out across this room of incredibly bright, passionate, young leaders who are looking to work for purpose-driven companies in the future, I couldn't help but to have this overwhelming feeling that they really didn't need to know more about Griffith or what we did or the impact that we were driving. But the one single piece of advice, as I looked out at this incredibly, and this could be your children, your teammates' children, my children. And I thought the one thing that would be most interesting, most important most relevant, was before they hitched their wagon to a star of any company that they wanted to join in the future, that's probably the most important thing they could do would be to reflect on their own personal purpose. Because before they subscribed to someone else's, the most important thing is what they felt their purpose was. And I use this metaphor or analogy from Aristotle, where your talents and unique, authentic talents and the needs of the world intersect, therein lies your vocation, your calling in Greek. And so I said, if there's one thing I could leave with you, is reflect deeply on this. You have a window of opportunity between October and when you graduate in May to be able to reflect and think about that before you choose the people that you want to work with, but know yourself. And it was interesting, we closed out, and the number of students that came forward to talk about this idea, this single powerful idea, was really, I was surprised. The curiosity that it had created, the desire to say, tell me more about that. And so I went away from that thinking, okay, so the single most biggest point that I wanted to deliver to this young group of 1,500 students was that seeking your personal purpose before you decide to hitch your wagon to the star of another company. I thought, have we done that ourselves? For all our associates around the world, have we created the space and opportunity to be able to reflect and think about personal purpose and its connection to the company, to the world? Now, so we're at a fast forward to May. So I'm going out, I sought some people to pull this together, and I'll tell a little bit of that story in a second. But fast forward, so we're with our global executive team. So we have 18 of our leaders, global vice presidents, regional presidents, and we're talking about this program. And they said, Brian, what if people find out that their purpose is not connected with what we do? And they leave. And I said, that's okay. It's a gift. I said, why would we want anybody to have that their true calling wouldn't be with what we're doing and connected to that? So I said, regardless of that, that could be possibly the worst reason ever for not doing this. And I love this quote from Twain. And so one of the things we have, I'll go forward here, is we started creating a program that said, how do we actually enable this to happen? One of the great things about privately held companies, what I'll say, is that we do listen to our teammates and whatever, but we'll also be able to make a bold call to say, we're going to do something a little bit different, and we're going to be able to create this experience. And so what we sought to do was to create this kind of four-step process. That first and foremost, though, the critical part that we had been spending since 2013 talking about living our purpose, and I'll talk about our company's purpose, and actually how we take that forward. But this critical link that we have in terms of actually spending the time, the space, and having it facilitated in a way that made it accessible, inspiring, and actually able people to action it. So we got some experts together and we said, okay, we want to build this platform to do this. And it starts off with that personal purpose journey, articulating what that is. It's about connecting it to the company's purpose in a way that's unique and understandable. And it's about how do we both, individuals and companies, impact society, our role in society. And Dave was talking about this earlier. We have a special role in society that we play, not just in terms of employing people, but being able to create an experience that is different and ideally better. And then activating that. And that's really about a personal process of actually creating a development plan that actually both activates it, but has this synergistic effect in terms of the journey. So this is what we set out to build. And really articulating individual purpose and kind of a riff on the Aristotle part is really, what are you good at? So people can use in terms of strength finders or a variety of different tools to be able to uncover that in terms of what's special about that. The unique and authentic talents and gifts that you have. And then fundamentally on an individual level is, what is your contribution? And ideally there is a context to that that's not just within the family, personal family, company, but also within society in terms of what is deeply meaningful and passionate to you. The other part about the needs in the world. As an organization, and we look around, whether it's in our neighborhood, in our backyard, or whether it's across the global landscape, of which this is the UN's Sustainable Development Goals for 2030 that were created. There's a mind-boggling 169 sub-goals that are attached to these 17. So I defy anybody to say that they're not connected to a need in the world, as an organization or as an individual. But the most important thing is it has to be connected, and it has to be real. We went through a process as a company, and it's a slide I dispensed with, that actually mapped our purpose to these needs, and then actually connected them to our capabilities and our strategy, which I'll talk about in a minute. But when you talk about the context of that, as an organization and or an individual, this is a good place to start. And that alignment between personal purpose and organizational purpose, in the fulcrum and the intersection, the nexus, is that enduring value that can be created. And what's unique about this and what's important is it's personal. This is not something, that personal side of that is yours. It's each one of our team members around the world that have an opportunity to do this. And I also would like to add at this point is that this is optional. Now, our leadership teams, we had 200 members of our teams around the world in our 5 different regions. They actually went through a kind of a high-touch facilitated version of what I'm going to be talking about, or the digital platform that we've created. And that was a 2-day workshop. And so the challenge we have around that is powerful, and the feedback from that was amazing. There were tears, there were sharing. Mike, there was points of vulnerability that as leaders, when we share together, is powerful. And so what we did to design around that was to ensure that how powerful, what was the anecdotal evidence and what was the experience that people were having going through that workshop. The platform I'm describing in those 4 boxes, this is an opt-in. I think another important thing about that is that when we are passionate about what we do and passionate about our companies, I mean, so many of you, your companies, your values, your mission are actually manifestations of yourself. And as we grow our teams. But it's really important is there's the optionality and there's choice. And so the program that we've created, the digital platform of the Purpose Accelerator, which is for all associates around the world, and eventually will be in 8 different languages, from anyone from hourly workers all the way through our leadership teams, is it's an opt-in. What's really important is that we don't get too dogmatic about what we believe and on that. And when we talk about organizational purpose, it is embedded, it is passionate, and then I'll talk about it. It is both, integrated and it's synergistic. But what's important about that is that we're actually be able to create an experience that opts in. For our company, going back to the start of our journey around organizing around impact, organizing ourselves around purpose, we used that analogy from Aristotle and applied it to the company. 400 associates around the world, 8 different languages, we screened and we'd had discussions about what was unique and authentic about Griffith. What we had been able, what embodied the experience that we were. What were the talents that we had? From a past, a present, and a future orientation. And really what the need in the world is. And the answer, and this is a great, because I think, Mike, you had made reference to this earlier. It wasn't about the family sitting down around the table going, you know what? This is what our purpose is going to be. We made it an inclusive process that enabled everyone to contribute, and we screened in every one of these words in 8 languages has a deep and resonant meaning. And the whole purpose together is what drives that. So with that is that we used that. And the ironic thing is Aristotle had that original statement directed at individuals. So we took this concept and be able to do that. What we also did is that when we operationalize this, and when you have a global enterprise, the degree of consistency that we want to have, that our model that we've talked about, and this is what we call our house. And so our house answers several critical questions on the right-hand side. And this is how we operationalize purpose, to ensure that it's holistic, that it's integrated, and it's synergistic. Purpose can't be something that's just on a wall. It can't be just a saying. It's how do you operationalize it at any given moment in time? And so we created our house as a way in almost every single meeting around the world that Griffith has, we start with our house. Because whatever topic we're going to be talking about lives inside here. So where you're at in terms of elevation for our leaders and for everyone in the company, we need to know where we are as it relates to purpose in terms of our why, but who we are and what we believe is our core values. And core values really essentially is what defines culture, because they're behaviors. Our sustainability platform is the triple bottom line. And our triple bottom line is people, planet, and performance. Sustainability isn't an initiative at Griffith. Sustainability is a platform. All of our initiatives live inside one of those buckets. When we start our meetings, we talk about people, then planet, then performance. And all of the initiatives that we have live inside one of those 3 buckets. It's a lens that way we look at the world. It's a filter which informs our decisions. And then fundamentally, it drives strategy. The top of our house drives our strategy. So it's not separate or disparate. When we look at our purpose in terms of what we're doing in the world of proteins, alternative proteins, plant proteins, insect, algae, fermentation, in terms of how we're doing that, how can we deliver delicious, nutritious food for the future? When we look at the where to play and the how to win, in terms of how you actually execute that, we ensure that the market segmentation, our understanding of where it's going and how we're doing it, the how to win are the capabilities that we have that are unique to us, that we deploy to deliver. Metrics. We use the multi-capital scorecard, which we're launching this year, which is based off the people, planet, and performance, to pull through all those things that we know are most important and reward against those from incentives. But more importantly is metrics about, are we driving the impact that we say in files that we are? And secondly, what did we learn from the mistakes, the things don't go so well, and the things that we're doing well, to say, do we want to be doing more or less of these types of things? This house operationalizes and brings to life purpose in terms of how we actually distill and execute across the company. But fundamentally, the most important part of any of this is the people first. It's the experience that people are having while we live our purpose, while we're executing that, and what are we doing going forward. And so this critical link that we've created about personal purpose and be able to go forward with that. Oh, and I might add, and so what we did is that also at this point in time, starting about between 2013 and 15, is that we decided we were going to rebrand the company. Our logo is a representation. It says some cool geometric shape. Our logo is a representation of the hand of care. The reverse image, which people don't necessarily see, is the fork. And the fork represents creativity. Nourishment is the green flash across, and of course, the round part being the world. And so we wanted to make sure as we rebranded that actually our logo was a representation of our purpose. Creating better together in terms of our ability to strive for the past 100 years and what we have to do to achieve our purpose going forward. So a taste of the virtual program that we have is very much in that 4 block that we talked. It's and in terms of that, it's an inside out, outside in terms of the top of the matrix. Everyone needs a good 4 box, right? Is that how we actually do that. And so in terms of the guts of the program, it's basically a 6-week program. First part is orientation. Second is around immersion. It really is around the platform itself, how do you navigate it, and this is the digital platform that we're talking about. So at this point, last week, we had 40 people just finished the beta test, which is one of the reasons I said maybe I should do this next year. They just finished the beta test on the digital platform. Now, they also have leaders within every business unit that we call purpose ambassadors. And we're facilitators and sponsors of each of the local programs. Now, this was a global program, so usually by time zone, we divided up the different cohorts within different areas of background, skills, experience. They really were able to come together. And of course, all of them raised their hand to want to participate in this as the rollout. And so first is the immersion about that. Second, in terms of the week 3, really very much is around creating space and time about personal reflection and a guided process of articulating your purpose. I would recommend, it's Kevin Cashman's Leadership from the Inside Out. We fundamentally use the first 4 chapters of Kevin Cashman's book, and it's a remarkable book, and I would recommend for each of you to pick it up. It's very dense, readable, actionable. And the way it's set up is it's something I think would be highly powerful to reflect on. And so we use that beginning to actually drive that part of the program. In terms of week 4, we really kind of revisit Griffith's purpose. Now, most of our teams have been exposed to our purpose and even the evolution or participated in its creation. So this is an area that usually is quite easy to be able to do. But it's really about the connection between personal purpose and the company's purpose to be able to do that. And that's where the focus lays. In terms of the next stage, in terms of week, is really about society. So it's about what is the value or the impact that we are driving together collectively and connecting to those needs in the world. And we have significance. So if you talk about what is ahead in the food industry, we got to feed 2 billion more people when we go from 8 to 10 billion in the year 2030. And the need to be able to do that, healthy, delicious, nutritious food, and how we actually are going to go about that, we have a lot of different ways at which we're actioning that, not the least of which, and this will be probably at the breaks and tomorrow, Regrained is a company that we work closely with in creating their recipe, and they upcycle brewer's spent grain. I know we have multiple breweries in the room. And they take brewer spent grain and upcycle that. So we talk about how do we actually make a difference in the world. And then lastly, really is around activating the purpose. That is the design of a personal development plan that's connecting all these things together, that's connected to their 3-year development plan. So we created this digital platform to be able to kind of create accessible content, the online discussion forums, learning missions, and journaling to kind of create the experience. There's other components to it, but these are the principal ones. And fundamentally, so the last couple slides, is that what we're trying to do and attempt is to equip and enable our people to go on a different type of journey. And it's interesting, Mike, you mentioned the word fulfillment. And there's data, and one of our partners, Imperative, in the bottom left-hand corner, a group out of Seattle, has an interesting body of work and knowledge that they've researched and about the idea of fulfillment. And in terms of the relationships And the dimensions of that, impact and growth, are the three primary drivers of that idea of fulfillment. We're looking for something more than engagement, which is critically important. But the idea of fulfillment, that we can have an impact on the lives of our team members around the world in a way that's different, that enables this experience to happen, is what we're seeking to do. And there's a cost and a downside. If we don't do this with the research that Imperative has put together, there's a huge downside. If we aren't able to create that type of fulfilling experience in our companies with our teammates, the likelihood that they look back and reflect and say that they have a fulfilling life to that point is incredibly low. And even if it is higher than 1%, we can do better. And I think this is the beauty of this group that I started out talking about. We as evergreen companies, we have an opportunity. In some ways, you would suggest we even have an obligation to create a better type of experience, a better, fulfilling role for our colleagues, our teammates, our associates around the world. We have an opportunity to do that. This room already believes deeply in that. So our duty as leaders is, how do we equip and enable that to happen? Not by chance, but by design, inclusive design, around creating that very experience, around personal purpose, company purpose, and how we actually drive impact in the world today. And I would say there are no companies better than Tugboat companies, evergreen companies, privately held companies, that can go on this journey in a way that is different and special. So I want to thank you so much